I want to take you on a journey in my life. My life's had a lot of highs, and it's had some lows. If I think back to 2007, after another day of feeling hopeless, after another day of hearing you did that wrong, after another day of feeling like I had no meaning in my life, I wanted the pain and suffering to end. I wanted some peace. I wanted some tranquility in my life. So that evening, I got in my vehicle and I was driving, and I received a phone call from my wife at the time. She said, "We know where you're going. We know what you're going to do, and your son is on his way." See, I was going that evening to take my life, and they discovered that. I couldn't let my son find me like that. I mean, that would put insult on top of insult, right? So I did what I had done for years. I laughed it off. I joked. I said, "I'm just out for a ride. I'm on my way home. I'll be there in a few minutes." I went home. I walked into the house like any other day, prepared for bed, went to sleep, got up the next morning, ate breakfast, went to work, just another day. I walked into my office, I sat down, I pulled open the drawer, and I reached out and I took 4 letters that I'd written, and I read each one again. These were my goodbye letters. These were the thank you letters to 4 of my most valuable employees that had made me a success, because I was. On the outside, nobody had an idea. Most people would look at my life and my journey and aspire to accomplish all the things that I had accomplished and be where I was. So why did I get to that day? How did I get to that day? If I think back to my childhood, my father, my brother, and my mother, that was my family, we had a phenomenal life. We had boats and camping trailers. We'd camp on the weekends. We had horses. We would horseback ride. We had cycles. We would motorcycle ride together. See, I had a great life from the time I was born until today, actually. But life can begin to change. Things can begin to happen that you have no control over. In May of 1989, I received a telephone call. "Vince, this is your mother. Your brother has an incurable disease." 2 months later in July, my father, that had been struggling with a heart condition for many years, would pass. 4 months later, in November of 1989, a day that should have been celebration, my wife and I had twin sons. One would pass in a matter of a few hours, and the other would be taken off of life support 3 days later. Things happen that you can't control. July 31, 1993, should have been a day of happiness. It was my niece's 5th birthday. That was my brother and daughter. That would be the day he would pass. Oh, and we had also learned my mother had an incurable form of cancer, and she would be gone. In a matter of a few short years, I lost everything in my life for support. What did I do? In construction, we're told you got to be tough. You got to be macho. At my father's funeral, I told everyone he's better off. He's no longer in pain. He's no longer suffering. My gosh, he was 59 years old. He had lived a full life. It's not how I felt inside, but that's what I had to portray as a tough individual. I told people the twins were born premature. They won't have to go through life with health issues. They'll be better off, right? No, I was better off. And that was selfish. I should have never felt that way. See, life gets tough, things happen. In the construction industry, we have to portray a front. Here in the UK in 2019, the suicide rate was as high as it had been in 2 decades. From 2011 to 2015, you lost more than 1,400 construction workers to suicide. On an average year in the UK, you'll lose 30 workers a year to work-related fatalities. You'll lose more than 400 to suicide. If you're a laborer in the UK, you're 7 times more likely to die by suicide than the general population. In this industry, we're told not to talk about our issues. So how do we change it? We change it with days like today. We change it by educating leaders in organizations that we will no longer accept not being allowed to express our feelings and our emotions. We have to educate labor leaders, trade organization leaders, owners of private companies, executives of publicly traded companies. See, these are the same people that every day tell us we have to talk about safety. Do you have your lanyard on if you're going to be working at height? Or do you have a trench box if you're going to be beneath the ground? Oh, and do you have your hard hat on? Every day they make us talk about that, but they never talk about what's beneath the hard hat. They never talk about the individual. They never talk about the brain, maybe the struggles. See, if I showed up at work today and I told them my chest is hurting, my left arm's hurting, they would tell me, we need to get you to a doctor, you might be having a heart attack. But if I showed up today and said, my baby girl is sick, she may have an incurable disease we don't know. If I told you that I'm struggling financially, I might lose my home, we might be homeless. See, we're not supposed to have those conversations. That's what we believe and that's what we know from history. And more importantly, we've been so conditioned to that we won't even try to open up that conversation because of the fear that we might lose our job, the fear that we might lose our next promotion. Why would I want to tell my boss that I couldn't even take care of my own life when I'd already asked him if I could run a company with 400 people? I would lose that promotion. I wasn't going to tell him that. So we change it through conversations. We train it through educating them that we have to have the conversations. And the conversations will be difficult. They'll be uncomfortable. There used to be a stigma that you would never ask someone if they were suicidal, because if you ask them, you might be planting the seed in their head. Study and research has shown that that's completely false. If you think someone is suicidal, you should ask them, are you suicidal? If they say yes, you should ask them, have you thought about how you would do this? And if they say yes, you should ask them, do you have the means to carry this out? You have to ask them questions. They're difficult questions. But you also need to be compassionate with them. And while you're together, say, is there someone that we could call? Maybe if we're workers, maybe we have a program at work. We could ask them. Do you have a clergyman, a pastor, someone that we could call? Is there a national line that maybe we could call and get help from? So again, it's difficult conversations. But I would also tell you this about the conversations. There's going to be periods of silence. There's going to be periods of what I would call awkward silence. See, during those times, we are suddenly thinking, someone has asked me, I didn't think anyone cared. So during those periods of silence, I'm processing what's going on. Maybe my life is worth something. It's not your job during those periods of silence to lead the conversation. It's your job during those periods to just listen through the conversation. Because in the conversation, you're not going to fix the problem, you're not going to solve the issue. That's for others to do. Your job is to help me acknowledge that I've got an issue. Your job is to help encourage me to receive the help that I might need, the treatment that I might need. I'll leave you with this. I once heard that it takes a strong, powerful, confident, patient person to be a great listener. Can you be that person and help save a life? Thank you.